So continuing on from part one, I guess this raises an even deeper question of uh, what type of converts are coming into Islam and staying within a Muslim community. Because not only are you entering, a situation where you're facing a lot of heat and estrangement from your own family and your community, you're also coming to another community that has a completely different cultural mindset that you do. So, you see many of the converts, myself to an extent, who, in the attempt to fit in, tried to absorb themselves into the new culture that they were basically entering by wearing the same clothes that they did, by eating the same food, which is inevitable, talking the same, dressing the same, dropping the accent. So they lost their accent and developed a new accent until to for some converts becoming almost completely unrecognizable to their own community. And this raises important questions. Is it valuable for converts to shed their own culture and adopt a completely new one? Because that's basically what these mosques are forcing these converts to do. You basically have to do as the Romans do. Just absorb yourself, assimilating into a totally different community. Now, I don't think they realize this. I think they want to definitely help out converts in many ways that they can. They definitely have, they definitely want to help us out. But I don't think they see that there's no other choice but to, assimilate in the purest sense of shedding one's former way of life and coming into a new one, which I can understand to an extent because you're dropping all these things that were previously acceptable in your old life but are now acceptable. But that creates this huge burden whereby if you suddenly fall back or slide back and do those things that you liked in your culture, it's very easy to fall off the boat. And sometimes a lot of these converts, when they do slide back, they feel so much shame that they just don't want to contact or even look the Muslim community that took them in the face. Islam never spread this way. I mean, when you look at the history of Islam, many of the cultures kept their own culture, and Islam just basically modified it, where over time they gradually dropped the things that were unacceptable from an Islamic standpoint in their religion, and entire communities were reformed. So mass immigration has kind of created this unnatural situation where the almost 90+% of the Muslim community is from another cultural background. So this issue needs to be addressed. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Moving on to language, and many mosques have imams and leaders that speak fluent English. So I'm not denying that, but there are also some mosques in the West, and let's be honest, where all the talks, the Friday sermon, even the instructions on just normal things are all in their own native language. Urdu, Bengali, Turkish. I've been to these places. Okay, so, and they do serve a purpose because there are people in the community that only speak that language. But, like we said, dawah is a fard kifaya. So at some point something has to happen if they wish to fulfill these religious obligations. And like I said, their hands are already tied so much. They've already spent so much money on funding these mosques. To go to them and ask them, to improve their English, it comes off as disrespectful. And you're sort of denying them their tradition. So, like I said, I keep the viewpoint that instead of trying to get them to accommodate or get us to accommodate to an extent, some separation is necessary. Now, I'm not saying total. I think that we should still pray and fast together and give each other salam. But if all these different communities that come from different parts of the world and large cities set up their own community centers, we should be able to do that also, especially given the fact that we're in this important situation as white African American Latino converts. So that's one thing about language. And sometimes the languages, they do speak English, but it's not to the level that it should be at. I mean, I learned French relearned French as an adult, and to this day, there's always going to be things in the Quebecois vernacular that I'm not going to understand, that I can try to understand. But let's take a small example. The word ici in French means here. But in Quebec, if you say the word ici with the T at the end, I can express annoyance, like you're angry at the person. It could also mean that you're talking to someone as a friend. So, um, like if I were to go to Japan as a Muslim and open up a mosque, right, and have nothing but people from non-Japanese backgrounds there, I would want to take as many opportunities as I could to have Japanese converts help them create their own organizations, because they know the language and the culture best, and they are the ones to best deliver it to the people. Another situation with language that's far more common is that even when it is in English, and converts are guilty of this as well, I'm guilty of this, we tend to use a lot of Arabic terms. It's even in the English translation, which is necessary to some extent because, you're trying to learn Arabic. Arabic is, the language of the Quran. It's the language of Islam. We have to learn it. So when it comes to the Friday prayer, yes, many of these terms, even in the English translation, have to be in Arabic. And, it's such a short time to give the khutbah, you don't have time to translate everything into Arabic and English. It's pretty much expected. But when you bring your non-Muslim family members to the mosque or to an open house, that can create a lot of barriers as well. I remember we had this one open house where they brought, my non-Muslim family members in and my friends' non-Muslim family members in, listened to a talk designed for non-Muslims, and at the end of the talk, we asked them what they thought, and they said I couldn't understand any of it. Why? Because it was in English, but all the terms were in Arabic, right? So if you're working for an NGO or your job, or you're doing a school project and there's jargon that you have to use, you have to know what your audience is like. They may know some Islamic terms, but for the most part they probably won't. Then you can only infer so much. And thirdly, language barriers can also occur on a textual level. This isn't as much of a problem anymore, but it still remains that some translations of the Quran do not fully give the full explanation of the Arabic term. Like one example in the Yusuf Ali translation of the Quran, it says, "Do not take the disbelievers as your awliya." As your friends, right? In Arabic, the term is awliya. Awliya does not mean friend per se. It means more of a guardian in faith. And we also use the term wali for a woman's guardian who will seek out a spouse that's suitable for her. And there's better translations now, but even a lot of these like anti-Islam figures will use old translations. So we have to know, get in touch with what the regional Arabic term means, right? There's other times where this comes into play as well. We can go into, but I won't go into too much because I only have so much time. So those are the biggest language barriers that we've seen. But going back to cultural, I remember one mosque we had, they constructed a kids center in the mosque for first generation Muslim youth. Had a pool table, foosball table, ping pong table, and all the kids would come and they would have a great time. And they would be in an Islamic environment, no drinking, no alcohol, and it kept the kids out of the clubs. But the uncles ended up just really getting rid of it. They said that it was batil, and again, a lot of these forms of entertainment were Western entertainment forms, and for whatever reason they didn't see the utility in it anymore. Maybe they just got tired of kids because they were being rambunctious. In any case, it's now gone. Okay, one of even just a small cultural thing that I think would lower Islamophobia would just to have every masjid in Britain have a proper dartboard in the basement. So if you have a bloke coming from the EDL or the BNP or Patriotic Alternative, they're stepping into a mosque for the first time. What better way to make them feel more comfortable to have a round of 501 with them, right? But again, a lot of times you can't see the utility in that, or it appears so out of place in Western that sometimes the mosque Islamic leadership can't see the utility in it. If they can't, I think it's high time that we have our own organization to help give dawah and talk to our own people, basically. On to part 3.